How you going, guys? Curtis from Cutting Edge Engineering. So today is going to be part 3 of our Huron slotting attachment rebuild, and the plan today is to get this completely reassembled, but before we can do that we need to get the housing sandblasted and all of the parts cleaned up. Before we can take it over for sandblasting, I need to remove all of the screws that hold on the wave wipers and the plaque off the side of the housing. So these rivets don't go all the way through to the other side, so we can't simply knock them out using a punch, and I don't really want to damage that plaque, so I'm going to try some side cutters to grab a hold of the rivet and extract it.
Aha! Oh. Job.
So this second one's giving us a little bit of trouble. I'm going to try and scratch away a little bit of that paint so we can get underneath it. So that's not working. I'm going to use a chisel and a hammer to try and lift that rivet.
Almost. Ah. Okay.
Now with that done, we can take them outside and get them sandblasted. while those are getting cleaned up in the parts washer, we're going to take the rest of the parts over to the bench grinder and get them cleaned up with a wire wheel. So with those bits done, I'm also going to clean up the end of the ram. So I'm just going to do a light Scotch-Brite along the faces of the ram, but before I do that, I'm going to remove the conrod. So not surprisingly, we're still finding things that are a little bit different from the first attachment we disassembled. The first one had Allen key bolts holding on the retaining plate on the conrod, and this one has got different fasteners with a tie wire to stop them being undone. So that's another clear sign that the first one had been apart before. And I'm just going to use a red Scotch-Brite. It is a very fine 320 grit pad, just to remove all those blemishes. And with that, I'm going to use a little bit of cutting fluid as a lubricant.
Gotta get that in. There we go.
That's the ram looking really nice. The next thing I want to do is replace the bearings in the conrod. But before we do that, our parts washer's about to finish. We're going to get those parts out. So that's the bearings pressed out, but before I press in the new ones, I want to make sure the oiler is feeding both bearings in the end of the conrod.
Oh. Oh, there. It definitely came out.
So that is definitely oiling both ends. Now we can press in our new bearings. And these were very hard to come by. It did take quite a couple of weeks for our supplier to let us know they had located them. And they weren't very cheap. They're about $160 each, plus freight. And unfortunately, because there was only 2 left in the country, we weren't able to get another 2 for the first attachment. So because the bearings out of this weren't in too bad condition and they still freely move, we'll be able to use them on the first attachment.
Where's... Did it matter where the grease hole is? No, okay.
It's got a channel around the bearing
Yeah,
to allow the oil to get all the way around it.
yeah.
So that's our bearings installed and all of our parts ready. Now we can start the reassembly.
There we go. Goes inside the conrod, doesn't it?
So I was just about to put the bolts in, but I did realise I left this little screw that goes in the end of the conrod not installed. So I'm going to pull this apart and put that in place. So I am reassembling this before paint because when you paint something and then try to reassemble it, the chances are you are going to damage that paintwork, or you might have to do the reassembly a couple of times if you forget a screw in the end of a conrod. I'd prefer to put them together and make sure everything works correctly before painting them. That way, if you do need to make any modifications or any adjustments, you can do so without damaging paintwork.
Center.
Yep.
Yep.
So with all that done, now we're going to get everything masked up, ready for painting. This one.
Ready.
That's the attachment painted in Zaya Blue, and we've let that dry enough. We're going to get it back into the workshop and finish getting it reassembled. So I'm not going to fit the mounting bolts just yet because that will mean flipping the attachment on its side. Before I do that, I am going to fit the way wipers. Unfortunately, neither attachment did come with any and they aren't actually available to buy. So I did get Troy to draw and 3D print a set out of a flexible thermoplastic filament.
Okay. And new screws.
Yep.
No, you have to re-tap all the holes. Pull them all out and do it again.
Those bolts are a little bit tight, so I'm just going to run the tap through them and clean out the paint.
Nothing's small enough.
Something we're not going to be refitting is the alignment key, because there is not a corresponding slot in the universal head on the Zaya.
Oh no.
Oh, no. Oh. Can't have that.
And this little plaque covers the hole, which is the access to oil the conrod.
Did you need to tap this hole at all?
The last thing to fit is the identification plaque. I don't have any rivets, so I'm going to tap the hole out to M4 and screw it in place. Righto guys, so that's our Huron slotting attachment rebuild completed. I'm really happy with how this turned out. It looks like it just came out of the factory, and hopefully it goes for many more years. Next thing we're going to do is fit it on the Zaya and give it a test run. Because this isn't an original Zaya attachment, there is a discrepancy of 10mm between the arbor in the slotting attachment and the spindle nose, so we'll be using a sleeve to offset that. Now we've got that bolted in position, I'm going to loosen off the drawbar bolt and cycle this by hand to make sure nothing is binding. So there's no problems there. I'm going to set the ram to its longest stroke length and lock the drawbar bolt. And we're also just going to oil the ram through the ball oilers. So we're ready to go, and we're going to start off at 44 RPM. So that's working beautifully. I'm just going to adjust the stroke length to 50 mil. I'm just going to bump the RPM up to 73 and see how it runs.
Okay.
Righto guys, so that's a very successful rebuild on our slotting attachment. It is as good, if not better, than it came from the factory. And the versatility from an attachment like this actually comes from the universal head on the Zaya, where you can point the attachment in any direction you want. So we can't actually use it on a job just yet. We still need to make the tooling for it, and that's going to be in a future video. So I hope you enjoyed the series of rebuilding the slotting attachment. Thanks for watching. Shit. I don't know how to put my arms. That's the attachment painted in Zaya Blue, and we've let that dry enough. We're gonna do... Oh, fuck.
What?
So that's the attachment painted in... Oh, fuck me. That's the attachment...
Oh, jeez.
We're gonna get it back into the workshop and finish... So what we're gonna do is... Oh, fuck me. I'm gonna set the ram to its longest length and strop... I'm gonna set the ram to its longest... cycle length. I'm gonna set the ram to its longest...
Sorry, Longle. Oh no.
Check the spiders.
Don't throw anything at me. What? What? The rotator?
I haven't moved.
Oh yeah. Woo! It definitely came out. Ooh.
Ooh, hello there.
It spurted.
Wakey. So that is definitely spurting well. It went everywhere.
I can already see the comments.
Yeah.
It's more impressive when it's full stroke.